Facebook Live. And we are live.
We're smiling and saying cheese, but no, tease, yes. Not cheese.
there's a funny story behind that.
We'll tell you in a bit. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I can see folks are starting to jump on, which is great. Today, we are honoring the name of our show, TeaFlix, with an absolutely fabulous guest. But first, a little housekeeping from yesterday. A belated happy 85th birthday to Sir Ringo Starr yesterday. And also what would have been my dad, Jim McCartney's 123rd birthday. You're not getting anything? No. Yes. Well, okay. Somebody sees us. Anyway, Jimmy Mac would have been 123 yesterday. And this is actually the 20th birthday week of Mrs. McCartney's Teas. It was born on the 4th of July, 2005. So we were founded then. And today we're thrilled to announce our latest flavor. Very apropos guest we have today too. It is called Vanilla Chai, and it's an ode to the great Tom Cruise film for which our Paul wrote the theme tune. So you can come and find that at mrsmccartneysteas.com. But now to the matter at hand. Never mind our sponsor, us. We're thrilled today, all the way from Portugal. Patty Farmer, also known as Lady Patty, is an American author, cultural historian, and former fashion model, best known for her meticulously researched books that explore the intersections of glamour, history, and pop culture. Often referred to as Lady Patty Farmer for her refined sensibility and devotion to elegant traditions, she's made a name for herself chronicling iconic institutions such as Playboy, the Plaza Hotel, and the global ritual of afternoon tea. A lifelong lover of vintage style and historical settings, Farmer's writing career took flight with her acclaimed series of books about the Playboy clubs, bunnies, and the entertainment legends who graced their stages. Titles such as the Playboy Book of Entertainment and Playboy Swings earned praise for spotlighting the women, musicians, and business minds behind Hugh Hefner's empire, often offering a humanizing and empowering view of an often misunderstood era. Her deep affection for the Plaza Hotel in New York City, sparked during her childhood visits to its Palm Court for afternoon tea, of course, inspired her to write Starring the Plaza. Hollywood, Broadway, and high society visit the world's favorite hotel. I'm just going to show you this fabulous book. It is stunning, and if you're a film fan, it's an absolute must-have. The book is a love letter to the hotel's role for shaping 20th century glamour storytelling and social life. Her most recent work, Tea Under the Palms, which is once you pick it up, you won't put it down, and it will make you hungry. From Leaf to Kettle, A History of Tea and the Art of a Proper Tea Party, reflects her lifelong passion for the art and etiquette of tea. In this volume, she elegantly explores tea's cultural influence from royal courts and wartime parlors to modern-day rituals of calm and connection. Ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Portugal, please welcome, known to the world as Lady Patty Farmer. Hello, Patty.
Hi, Patty. Good morning or good evening for you.
Hi, ladies. Thank you for me.
Absolutely. It's totally absolute pleasure. And
love your books.
Yes, incredible.
They're really beautiful, and the photography is marvelous too.
Absolutely. And thank you to Nina Gordon.
Nina, for putting you in touch, us in touch with you.
And getting us the books.
Yeah.
She was very diligent in that.
Yeah. Now, your book, Tea Under the Palms, it's such an evocative title, isn't it? What inspired you to write it? And the whole book focused on afternoon tea at the Plaza.
Well, like Ruth just previously mentioned, I fell in love with afternoon tea when I was 7 years old. Oh. My mother took me to my first grown-up tea at the Plaza Hotel, and I had to put on my Sunday manners, but, I loved it. It was almost like playing grown-up. But one thing that truly amazed me was the Plaza Hotel had these giant palm trees in flower pots in the restaurant. And I had never even seen for sure, because our family didn't go out to dinner that much. But I imagine if we did, I wouldn't have seen too many palm trees in the restaurants.
Yeah.
I couldn't even have imagined palm trees in restaurants. So that made a lasting impression on me and actually propelled me to higher education, also because my mother explained to me that if I wanted to live that way, I was going to have a very good job. So,
That is sound advice. Yeah, potted palms, they used to call them. And there were certain places in London and a couple, I think one, the Adelphi in Liverpool, used to have them. But you knew you were in a Tony place if they had potted palms.
Yeah. Potted palms, yeah.
Really set the tone. Well, you couldn't really have palm court with cacti, could you? I mean,
you have a point there, Ruth.
Yeah.
So you've also written extensively about the plaza itself, the history, residents, legends. What's one secret or surprising fact about the hotel that you uncovered in your meticulous research that most people don't know?
Well, one of the things that really surprised me, because going from that 7-year-old young girl, it just fomented my dream. I wanted to not only live like that, I wanted to live there. So when the plaza went condo, I was fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time with a few dollars in my pocket that I could buy an apartment there. So, you know, I lived there, and it was during the housing crash of 2007, and there wasn't much going on. I'm a businesswoman, and nobody was doing business. So I walked around the hotel, you know, and I found out The Way We Were was filmed there, Hitchcock filmed there. You know, just name a movie. Home Alone 2, of course, the iconic Home Alones were filmed there. On and on. So many famous people got married there. Robert Goulet got married there. The Kennedys got married there, on and on. So the more I knew, the more I learned, the more I wanted to know. And I went to the hotel management and I asked if I could see the archives. And this, getting back to answering your question, I was shocked to learn there were no archives. And my expression exactly, you know, I said, how could this be? We're celebrating the 100th year of the Plaza Hotel and you have no archives. And they were very nonchalant. And they said, well, we've always had private owners. We had Conrad Hilton and I forget if it was Jaja or Eva Gabor, you know, owned it at one time. And when they sold it, you know, they took what they wanted with them, photographs and memorabilia and maybe some of the silverware. I don't know for sure, but, you know, Trump owned it, Ivanka owned it, or Ivana, excuse me, owned it.
Right.
So,
yes, that's right. Yeah.
You know, they took a lot of the history with them. Rightfully so, you know, they owned it, they wanted to keep it, whatever. Wow. So that surprised me to learn about the hotel because there was so much going on there, so many movies, peace agreements, world affairs, movie premieres.
I mean, and just you think, you know, your book is for me, it's fantastic because I'm a big movie buff, and you know, on the cover you've got Robert Redford and Eartha Kitt and Cary Grant and, you know, Macaulay Culkin and what have you. So it's very movie oriented. But when you think about that, they didn't have the foresight, not even Donald Trump, because he's a very, you know, historical person. They didn't have the foresight to hire an archivist and say to the owners, no, you can't take that with you. I mean, there must have been photographs of everyone from the Queen of England to Henry Kissinger and back.
There was. And
incredible.
Yeah. A lot's been hunted down, a lot's been reproduced in magazines and newspapers, but it's not that original, iconic, you know, Marilyn Monroe walking in the fountain or Jacqueline Kennedy but, you know, that's in the past. They are archiving now, you know, going forward.
If they had space in a ballroom, I'm sure they could open a museum and raise a lot of money for charity. I'd pay to go see all that stuff. 100%.
A lot was going on. You know, that's where Debbie Reynolds caught Elizabeth Taylor with Eddie Fisher.
Oh, is it really?
Remember that story? She talked the front desk into giving her house key and walked in on them, you know, and she looked at Eddie and said, "Tell me nothing's going on now." You know, no, I don't know for sure that's what she said, but you know, how can you deny anything now?
Wow.
Well, this beautiful book of yours has certainly put the Plaza well and truly on the map again. I was fascinated with it. It's really gorgeous.
And the fact that it's had the history of the Palm Court and Eloise and tea and all of that. It's just such a deep, deep New York institution, isn't it?
Yeah. So now, from your perspective, how has the ritual of afternoon tea evolved over the decades, especially as iconic values like the Palm Court?
Venues.
You know, I'm finding through all the research that it's becoming more popular nowadays. Yeah. And I've thought about it a lot. I'm not sure if it's because maybe we're in tumultuous times now, you know, where we want something as civil as a cup of tea, you know, to go in alone or with friends or with a date and have tea. You know, many times I'll be in one of the tea rooms around the world and I'll see men and women just sitting by themselves, enjoying an afternoon, full afternoon tea, you know, with the tea tiers and a nice pot of tea. But, you know, I kind of theorize it might be that. And also, I'm finding, surprisingly, I think, that more of the Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, are going in mixed groups, you know, that the guys are there with them. And rather than perhaps going at 4 or 5 o'clock to the bar, they're meeting, you know, at the St. Regis or the Plaza or, you know, the Ritz in London, having afternoon tea and catching up with their friends.
Yeah, you know, a lot of the younger folks don't drink alcohol anymore. So I suppose socially, if you're not going to go to a bar or a club, you know, it's a nice place to meet what my grandmother would have called the right kind of person.
Oh, shucks. We want a few of the bad ones in there, too.
Oh, yeah. No, that's the only bad thing about afternoon tea. You don't meet too many rock and roll bad boys, but, you know, you never know. So you've had access to an incredible, speaking of archive, but a whole pile of stories and personalities. How do you, as a writer and in your personal life, how do you balance the glamour and the glitz and the legendary stories with accuracy in your historical writing?
I am a geek. You know, I am a businesswoman, first of all, but I'm also a geek. You know, I do a first draft and review it. I actually hire a research team if I'm doing more than putting a picture book together. So I count on them for the facts and figures. And then I also go back and verify those facts and figures. And if I'm writing a book like, you know, maybe one of the Plaza books, I got all the facts and figures and the who did what, when, and what time. And then what I thought was fun is I went to the actual performers that were still alive and I asked them about it. You know, I went to Jack Jones and sat down with Jack Jones and Carol Lawrence and Marge Champion, Sonny Rollins, and all these wonderful people, and started over, you know, did an interview from scratch and then made sure the dates and the numbers and everything. So I like to think, you know, that is what maybe sets me a little bit apart. I add that personal touch, you know, I let them tell the story and advance the story. You know, I could tell Tony Bennett's story, but it's so much nicer and more authentic to let Tony tell it.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely. We had Tony's daughter, she's a friend of ours, on here a few weeks ago, and she's still, you know, paying homage to her dad and digging up, you know, people will come to her and say, your dad once told me this, or your dad once told me that. And it's really keeping Tony alive for Antonia and the family. So it's so nice, especially when these celebrities either, you know, unfortunately can't remember too much about the past or pass away. Their legacy is being kept alive by authors and historians like you. So I just think it's a beautiful thing. It's not just you know, to hold the book in your hands. But the amount of love that you put into these things is just incredible. It really is.
It was an honor for me. You know, Tony invited me to his 90th birthday party, you know, and that was, you know, I felt like I must be doing my job right if he felt
Yes.
that I deserved to be at his birthday party, and Paul was there too. So we did get to chit chat at
Great
birthday party.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's almost like with a lot of the authors from Beatle books that we interview, you know, they're with the subjects they interview, you have to become kind of a trust architect, don't you? Because you're building your story your way, and what they tell you, they have to feel secure in the knowledge that it's not going to be twisted or sensationalized, or, you know, they're talking to a proper writer, not the yellow press.
Exactly. And I, in the beginning, it was a little bit, you know, taking a leap of faith. You know, a lot of the agents and the stars didn't know me. I didn't have a reputation, but after a while, I did get this reputation for accurate reporting and storytelling. And, you know, I got an interview with Joan Rivers, and that was because they knew I was fair and accurate.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, Joan could be tough. I worked with Joan, but, you know, if she took you in, she took you in. She was one of those friend to the end people, you know.
Yeah. So, yeah, you seem to be drawn to the cultural hotspots, don't you? Like Las Vegas, the Plaza, the Playboy Empire. What connects these settings in your mind as a historian and an author?
That is a brilliant question. And I have found that they're all interwoven. You know, I could be talking to somebody about the Plaza Hotel, and this is how I segued into the Playboy clubs, because I was doing interviews about performing at the Plaza Hotel, you know, the Persian Room, and they'd say, well, you know, playing at Playboy. And I'm like, you're Patty Page. What do you mean you played at the Playboy Club? And she said, yes, I played at the Playboy Club. So that led me to the Playboy Clubs. Yeah. And talking to them, the singers, the comedians, led me to Vegas. You know, David Brenner was out in Vegas. So I go to you know, where the stars are. Shecky was still with us, and he was out in Vegas. So head out to Vegas and hang around with, you know, Shecky, and get what old Hollywood and old Vegas was like. And I think I'm not as old, or I'm not old enough to have enjoyed it, but I live vicariously. I mean, I would have loved to have lived in the day.
When I was growing up, I had a horrible crush on Andy Williams. I didn't realize he was, you know, old enough to be my father or grandfather at that point. But I heard Moon River once, and I just went into a swoon, you know, on the radio. And one of my favorite quotes on the back of another one of your brilliant books, The Persian Room, is from Andy Williams. And he said, some of my happiest days and nights was spent in the Plaza Hotel and at the Persian Room. Kay Thompson and the Williams brothers packed them in every night. Great memories. Boy, I mean, just names like the Williams brothers.
I know. And to talk to Andy and get a side of his story that isn't often told. He said when he was performing at the Persian Room, his off time was spent going through the galleries of New York, and he fell in love and appreciated art. And that was the genesis of his brilliant art collection that he became so famous for.
Yeah, that's incredible. But again, you know, these kind of places are vortices, aren't they, for the celebs? I can now see in the connection in my mind from, you know, your fascination with the Plaza as a little girl to become, and I didn't know until I was introduced to all your literature that you could actually buy a place in the Plaza. I thought it was just a hotel and you checked in for however many nights and checked out. I didn't realize that they had condoed some of it. How fascinating. When do you know approximately when they did that?
It was about 2005. Okay. And the Plaza at that time was owned by one of the sheikhs. And he wanted to condo the whole hotel and thought, well, you know, I own it. I can do what I want with it. Ha ha. You know, he came up against the unions. And I forget who was mayor, governor. It might have been Mike Bloomberg. He tried to negotiate. The unions came in and stopped him. Food, beverage, and the doormen's union. They were powerful enough to stop him from condoing the whole hotel. So there's only a certain amount of condos that were.
So presumably because they wanted to keep X amount of the rooms so that they would have jobs for porters and housekeepers and local 99 or whatever it was. Well, exactly. Vegas is very much the same way, isn't it? I mean, you don't get very far on the strip without the unions.
No, not at all. And that reminds me of a funny story. I was in Vegas interviewing. If I talk too much.
No, it's lovely.
Not at all.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going, wow. I could talk to you all day. Please.
Well, we're going to have some get together over tea.
Indeed.
But I was talking to David Brenner, and he was telling me how he liked it so much better when the mob ran Vegas than when the corporations and conglomerates took them over. And he said back in the day, Luigi would come back and, you know, say, we're going to put, you know, a bar in your dressing room and some food. And David was not that friendly. I mean, we got along fine, but it wasn't like he wanted, you know, 20 people in his dressing room after a show. And he told Luigi, he said, no, I don't need a bar. I'm not going to allow people back here. And Luigi's like, no, you have to have a meatball. You have to have a meatball to give the guests, you know. And David said that's what it was like, you know, and they would book 6 months ahead on a handshake, and he'd show up at McLaren Field, get off the plane without any publicists or anybody confirming the date. There'd be a limo from the hotel, and everything would be Jake, you know, just what they had agreed to. And he said it was not that way under the corporations. Things changed, and you know, he was told to, oh well, sue me, you know, because you know, we weren't sticking to the terms of the agreement. Something better came up. So
yeah, I mean, I think Vegas probably saw, you know, there was money in, especially the Convention Visitors Bureau. We did a lot of business in Vegas in the mid 2000s with McCartney Multimedia. We produced all of the video emails in Flash for MGM, Bellagio, Treasure Island, New York, the whole MGM, you know, conglomerate. And we saw it turn from really a fun town into Chuck E. Cheese. I mean, people were taking their kids down the lazy river, and you know, you could get Disneyland meals, and you know, and then they came to their senses and, you know, brought back in some good shows. And I think there's a good balance there now. I think you can go to a convention, do some business, but there's still fun to be had. You know, under the covers, if you know what I mean. Behind the curtain might have been a better choice,
so to speak, right? I think they still do those algorithms, you know, to figure out how much we can afford to spend on each gambler to make it worth our while. Do we send a plane or give them, you know, comps or whatever? Where back in the day, you know, the wise guys used to just make it fun, and
sky's the limit.
Yeah, God, absolutely. I mean, even up until the Elvis white jumpsuit days in the 70s, it was still, you still had that kind of Rat Pack vibe. And then one of our dear departed late clients and lifetime friend David Cassidy put a show on at the Rio called The Rat Pack Is Back, and it was sold out up and down. They were doing like 10 shows a week, him and Sheena Easton. It was a fabulous show. I think, you know, the nostalgia is there.
Yeah, your books often they sort of focus on entertainment and nostalgia. You know, why do you think readers are still so drawn to these golden era stories?
Again, I think, you know, it was a simpler time, you know, where it wasn't as crazy You know, yes, you had Ozzy eating chicken heads or bat heads or whatever he did, but you know, you had the Beatles, you had Frank and Dean and Tony and Andy, and you know, they wore ties. You know, going out to dinner, they wore hats. You know, Frank always insisted that anybody that hung out with him wear a hat. You know, and it was kind of, sure, they could be naughty, and I've heard many of those stories too, but behind closed doors, you know, you probably know many more stories than will ever be known.
I'm not allowed to say.
She's going to plead. She's pleading the fifth.
Yeah.
But it was behind closed doors, right? You know, it was, you know,
kind of discretion, wasn't there?
Right.
That's the word. I think that's a good word. Yes.
Speaking of Ozzy, I used to be the receptionist at Jet Records, which was run by Don Arden and his daughter Sharon, who is now Sharon Osbourne.
Yes.
And I was answering the phone, and our office boy, nice gentleman, Larry Ross, I got a phone call from Ozzy, and he's like, "Is Larry there? It's Oz." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So I put him on, and he's like, "Well, I'll have to get petty cash." "Well, I don't think they open till 10. What time do you need them?" And so the backstory is Ozzy's calling Larry, the office runner guy, to say, "Can you go down to the pet shop on Pico and pick me up 2 turtle doves?"
Oh, you know, my God.
So I gave him I didn't know what he was going to do with them. I actually gave Larry Ross the petty cash that bought those doves that poor Ozzy picked. I know. He just wanted the it was a meeting with him and Sharon and CBS, and they'd gone in to negotiate the contract, and it had all been a bit contentious. And so Ozzy was like, "Well, if they don't want to make peace, I'm just going to bite it." I think he gave him lorazepam or something, and he had one in each pocket. They were fast asleep. So they were out cold. No, it's still no excuse. But he took him to the meeting, and one of them started to wake up, and then they burst into an argument in the boardroom and whatever. And he's like, "Well, if you can't make peace, you know, I brought you a dove, and if you can't make peace," and of course, he famously bit the head off the dove, right, and spit it in the wastebasket, got in the limo, came back to the office, and my phone bank had lit up like the 4th of July. And I'm like, "Ozzy, please tell me you didn't." Larry just went and bought the, "No, you didn't," whatever. He said, "I certainly did. And this bugger's waking up," and he did it again and spit it in my bin. It's like, oh my gosh.
Holy smokes.
He took a victim and a backup, and the backup started to wake up, and he's like, "Got to get rid of it."
I used to know somebody in Australia who used to smuggle
snakes in his belt.
No, the rare birds.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he used to give them a dose of something to put them out.
Yeah.
Take them on a plane, put them in his carry-on, and stick them in the overhead bin. And a plane was delayed once, and he could hear it.
Oh my God.
I know.
That was the end of his bird smuggling career.
We're getting off the track, but that's my former career when I was doing 9 to 5 stuff. Speaking of careers, your mother obviously gave you great advice that you need a great education if you want to live at the Plaza, because you have to make some money. How do you think your background as both a businesswoman and also a model, so being sort of behind the desk in the decision-making thing, but also in front of the camera, did you take lessons from each one of those stages of your life to help you navigate the world of celebrity interviews and archival research and how to, you know, navigate all that?
Yes, absolutely. I think if we're smart, we try to learn, and sometimes it's from those mistakes, you know, and sometimes it's from a formal education, but absolutely. Also, I was kind of brought up with a few celebrity friends, and then in modeling, you know, you meet other superstars and this and that. So, you know, hanging out with them, it parlays into you just know other people, and if you don't know the people, you know the agents, and it snowballs. But yes, absolutely, from businesswoman and model to dealing with people, you learn how to navigate a question, you know, how to conduct an interview, you know, what is your job. And I try to stay focused. I have become friends with many of the people I've interviewed, but I always start out reminding myself and knowing full well that it's a job. You know, I'm not there to advance myself, you know, to get invited to a celebrity party, which I kind of stay away from them now anyway, you know.
Yeah.
Done that, you know.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely. You know, every step was a stepping stone.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been the dichotomy between being a model and in the 90s and 2000s. I'm sure that was still, you know, prior to the Me Too movement. I'm sure you and I both had to negotiate. How do you say no politely, but not get blackballed in the city? You know, that's a tough one.
Exactly.
So your business, you know, once you learn that from the female perspective, I think it gives you a better negotiating tactic as a businesswoman, because you learn to read people faster and you trust your gut, right?
And you learn when to say, oh, that looks like a penis, only smaller.
Exactly right. Exactly. That was one of my favorite lines in the 80s. I used that a lot.
Oh, just like a penis.
we said it once.
We could be friends with you girls.
Oh yeah. Our audience knows us.
It's a negotiating. You know, every time you're put in a situation like that, I think it's a negotiation. You know, how you get yourself out of it, and then when you're negotiating for, you know, a piece of real estate or business deal, you have a little bit more experience.
Yeah.
Unusual experience, probably.
Yeah, and you know, leverage. It's, you know, that's business, isn't it? Yeah. It's all about leverage and give and take, and making sure at the end of the day, hopefully everybody gets the deal they wanted, and you can go on to do another deal, right? Exactly. That's how you build your portfolio, I'm sure.
Right.
I'm sure.
Do you have a dream subject or dream location still unexplored that you'd love to write a book about next?
You know what? I've been very fortunate and very lucky that I'm doing what I want. You know, I love show business, music, comedy, and I'm still talking to those folks and interviewing them and finding out more. One of my regrets is I came into Playboy right, I'd say I had about maybe 7 years with Playboy before we lost Hef. You know, so a few years earlier might have just been that much more fun. You know?
You know, he had that whole go to work in your pajamas and work out of your house thing down way before COVID.
That's true. He used to paper the windows. So not only would he wear pajamas, but he didn't want to know if it was night and day. And he did that in the office. He didn't want his reporters and editors, etc., to be influenced by what they should be doing because it was noon or it was 3 o'clock or whatever.
Yeah. Wow.
Interesting.
So blackout windows.
I knew he did that when he did his stint in Vegas. He bought was it the Tropicana that he owned in Vegas? I can't remember the hotel, but he moved in. Oh no, that was, I'm on drugs. It was Howard Hughes, not Hugh Hefner. It's the H.H.
Oh my gosh, I totally missed that part where he owned a hotel in Vegas.
No, wrong H.H. It was Howard Hughes. But you know, they're both mavericks, aren't they? They're both of the same age, of the same time. One's in, you know, aerospace. We live very close to where they built the Spruce Goose. And it's still Howard Hughes Land and Howard Hughes Parkway. But I'll bet Hugh Hefner and Howard Hughes probably knew each other.
I'm sure they did. I've been to dinner at Hef's house where Howard's ex-wife, and I'm struggling for her name right now. I'm sorry, but she was there at dinner.
I think he had a few of those.
Right. But it was fun talking to her, and I forget her name. But anyway.
Yeah, no, they were both absolute mavericks. But Howard Hughes also used to black out. He had the same thing. He didn't want to know what day it was, even day or night.
I know the feeling.
Yeah. During the pandemic, we created some T-shirts over here. you remember the American restaurant chain TGI Fridays? Thank God it's Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
So we did a bunch of T-shirts. TGI question mark. Thank God it's what? which was really fun. Back to afternoon tea, however, because this is, you know, we are obviously here to promote all of your books, but Tea Under the Palms it's such a great size too. I love this because you can read it on the plane, you can put it in your backpack, you can, you know, you literally take it anywhere. It's a handbag sized book. What's your go-to afternoon tea order? What's your favorite sandwich? Or, you know, and if you could put the perfect plate together, who is one of the stars, either alive or passed on, that you would love to have tea with?
Well, I like a strong, spicy tea, you know, so I'm partial to a lot of the African blends and the chais. You know, that's my go-to. Yes, when you were introducing that, I was writing on my pad that I'm going to have to go online and order it. And I'm sure I'll find more things I want to order. But I just tried. It was recommended to me, and it was just from Harrods. It was I hate to say a tea bag, but you're going to think this is horrible. It's peppermint and licorice. Have you tried?
Oh, that sounds good, actually.
Yes.
See, it sounded hideous to me, but I did try it because a host recommended it, and I wanted to be able to say I tried it.
Right.
Oh my gosh, it's heavenly. Really delicious.
I can see, because licorice is from the fennel family, right? So I can see how, and it has that kind of cooling spice thing. One of the clients we represent is a Michelin star chef out of Houston, and he's runs an Indian restaurant called Musafir. And in the summer, people don't think of Indian food, but he's got a whole menu of cooling spices, like with peppermint and fennel and whatever, because it cools the body down. And so for a summer tea, I could see peppermint and licorice.
Yeah, it was
interesting.
Really, I can't wait until I get back and can stock up, because I've tried getting it online and nobody delivers anything to Portugal. So
we will. Unfortunately, the post office, it will probably be prohibitive, but you never know. You can scratch a few lottery tickets and then we'll be able to send it over. But yeah, that sounds like a really interesting thing. So who, if you could name anybody in history, alive or dead, that you would like to sit down for an afternoon tea with, who might that be?
I think I already had my dream. I have to tell this story. I was at the Plaza Hotel with Celeste Holmes, the Academy Award winner, and she was one of the people I interviewed for one of my books, The Persian Room, and we hit it off. So every once in a while we would get together for tea, she and her lovely husband Frank Basile. And so we were there in the Palm Court of the Plaza Hotel,
naturally,
and of course, and we saw Aretha Franklin walk in with her entourage. I think Clive Davis, she must have been having a meeting with Clive, but she also had like 3 bodyguards, and it was like across the aisle. So we noticed her, and Celeste was in a walker by this time. You know, she was very elderly, and we noticed her and went on with having our conversation. Well, Aretha noticed her across the hallway and got up and came over. And that was like such a thrill for me. She came over to pay respects to Celeste. And, she introduced her to me, and she sat and chatted for a few minutes. So I don't know. I'd have to think long and hard about topping that.
Yes.
See, that's kind of fun. That was fun.
Incredible. Wow. I just, yeah. I mean, Clive Davis in the Palm Court makes perfect sense, doesn't it? I mean, he's a New Yorker through and through. And why not? Well, this has been an absolutely fascinating thing. We always ask our guests, is there anything in your passionate world or your future or something that we in our era omitted to ask you? Is there anything you want to, put out there that people may not know about Patty Farmer?
Oh no, I'm just the writer. You know, it's the subjects that are the fun things. So it's the movie stars. You know, one thing I do have to, it's a regret, and starring the Plaza showcases all these great movies. You know, Robert Redford, you've probably met him, but I haven't had the honor yet. And I still have in my head, he's still like the most romantic, sexiest, nice guy, and I don't want to be disillusioned. But he did like 5 movies at the Plaza Hotel.
Really?
I know. And yes, I mean, he stole my heart. I think he's just the most handsome man. And I have to say, regarding the Plaza, I had the opportunity to talk to Neil Simon, and I asked him, I said, Neil, why did you set your story, Plaza Suites, in the Plaza? New York has the Waldorf. It could have been Waldorf Suites or St. Regis Suites or anything. And he just looked at me like I fell from Mars. And he said, I never considered another name. I never considered anywhere else.
Wow.
No.
Wow.
That's
That's certainly some great accolade from, you know, the great Neil Simon. Gee, I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that, right?
Yeah.
That's incredible. So,
yeah, where can people find you?
And your books,
and your books, yeah.
The books can be found most bookstores in America, but the easy way is Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Always keep them fully stocked. If they want to come and see me personally, I'm in the Algarve in Portugal.
Excellent. And also scrolling across is your website, patty-farmer.com, which has got a ton of really interesting backstory in your bio and some great photos and stuff. I can't thank you enough. This has just been a great way to celebrate the launch of a brand new flavor, vanilla chai, and the 20th anniversary of Madam's Tea Company here. I can't believe it's been 20 years.
And I'm 2/3 of the way this year to my 96th birthday.
That's right. Yes, she's going to be, she's
96 in November.
She's 95 and 2/3. There you go.
Brilliant.
Our regular viewers will know that we always have a limerick to thank our guests, because Madam has another book out called Mrs. McCartney's Liverpool Limericks and Other Random Irish Haikus. So you see, she's all about writing the limerick. So if you are sitting comfortably, we will begin. I'll let you count it off at the speed you like, Madame.
With a 1, 2, 3. Lady Patty sips tea with great charm, while uncovering tales that disarm. From the plaza's gold glow to the jazz scene's smooth flow, her books bring nostalgia so warm. Lady Patty's found peace in the breeze, in Portugal's life of great ease. With her books in your hand, you'll feel royally grand. Here's a toast to her spilling the tea. Ta-da! Ta-da!
Thank you so much. And I'm going to have to write that down, or maybe
I will email it to you. Absolutely. And everybody go search patty-farmer.com or Patty Farmer on Amazon, and I promise you will while away some fabulous hours. I know our friends Barbara George and Joanne Grubbs and all of the tea ladies are on today. So that was fabulous. And yes, Ashley, thank you. And we will see you very shortly. And once again, from Playa del Rey, good night to Portugal. And as we say in the Eurovision, Portugal, 12 points.
Ciao, ladies.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.